Still Fire Talking, Book Introduction. Today we'll be reading pages from a book called Still Fire Talking. It is a book written by our author Patricia Polacco about her life. In this book, she shares stories about her childhood and how many of those events inspired her to write the books we enjoy reading. We call this type of book an autobiography. Let's look at excerpts from an interview Patricia Polacco gave about how she comes up with her ideas. Collaborative classroom interview. Your family spent a lot of time doing what you call fire talking, your grandmother telling stories in front of the fireplace, while you and your brother nibbled on popcorn and apples. When asked if the story was true, she would say, "Of course it's true, but it might not have happened. You're the fire talker now." Polacco. Yes, I am. How might the quote, "Of course it's true, but it might not have happened," give us a clue to how Patricia Polacco writes her stories and expands her ideas? Could you share some thoughts about your grandmother's answer and how her truth applies to your own stories? Well, there is truth and there is truth with quotes. If you're looking for dead-on accuracy in the recounting of events, I think that is not the purview of a storyteller. A storyteller is certainly going to embroider and add things that are exciting and amazing. My father's mother was Irish and my mother's mother was Russian. Both of those cultures rely heavily on relating to the world as we know it through tale and story. To answer your question, I guess I would have to say I think all of us have our own truths. There are some that are universal, that all humans feel. Then there are some truths that are stretched and pulled and molded to suit a personal family story. Patricia Polacco said the role of a storyteller is to embroider or add things to a story to make it exciting and amazing. Embroider means to make a story look fancy, to weave in words and descriptions that make the story seem like a beautiful picture. She says you need to stretch, pull, and mold a story to make it more touching to a reader. Purpose for listening. See if you discover some real facts about Patricia Polacco that she included in her book that we have read. Listen for examples of some details that she made up or fictionalized in her writing. Listen to places she may have embroidered to make her story more powerful. Still Fire Talking by Patricia Polacco. It's dedicated to her family. There we go. A little bit better. All right. I was born on July 11th, 1944 in Lansing, Michigan, and grew up in Union City until my parents divorced. Then my mother, my brother Richard, and I moved to Oakland, California. Every summer, though, Richard and I went back to Michigan to live with our dad. My mother's people were Russian, and my father's people were Irish. In The Keeping Quilt and The Blessing Cup, I tell how my mother's family came to be in America. The cup was broken during an earthquake in California. The original quilt now hangs in the Mazza Museum at the University of Findlay in Findlay, Ohio. My beloved sister-in-law and her quilting guild made me an exact replica that we now take to school visits, weddings, chuppas, to celebrate new babies, to use as a tablecloth, and for other special occasions. Fiona's lace tells a story of how my father's family came from Ireland. Both sets of my grandparents were amazing storytellers, With almost no urging at all, they squinted up their eyes, watched our faces, and began to tell. Many of our evenings were spent in front of the fireplace, popping corn, eating apple wedges, and hearing rich, incredible tales. My babushka, my Ukrainian grandmother, called this fire talking. Whenever she finished one of her tales of magic and mystery, my brother and I would always ask, Bubby, is that a true story? She would look at us and reply, Of course it's true, but it might not have happened. It was she who taught me to make beautiful decorated paisanki eggs. Because I have such a special love for these Ukrainian eggs, I wrote a story about them called Reshenka's Eggs. In both Mom's house and at Dad's place, there was always a rocking chair just for me. I spent hours and hours just rocking and dreaming every day. I spent a lot of time in my imagination. It soothed the pain of not doing well in school. I had difficulty reading. Math was and still is almost impossible for me. I knew that inside I was very smart, but at school I felt stupid and slow. I had to work very hard to learn things. Now that I am grown up, I realize that I process information differently than most people do. My brain scrambles images that my eyes see. Once I got the hang of it, I went on in school. I ended up graduating from college and getting my PhD in art history. My experiences learning to read and write prompted me to write, Thank you, Mr. Falker. During the winter, we host a holiday event. I display over 22 trees in my home and studio. We raise money for our food pantry and local charities. My concerns about the welfare of children have influenced me in topics I write about, including bully, a recent favorite of mine. What did you learn about author Patricia Polacco that may have been an inspiration for her to write one of her books? Which book do you believe this may have inspired?